Welcome to the Oracle Scroll. My name is Kevin Walder and I am your host, and I invite you to join my guests and myself as we discuss all things metaphysical. Our guest today is the Reverend Judyth Sult, who hails from Bellingham, Washington. I learned from her website that she is an empowerment coach, an author, a teacher, and a healer. It says she has been passionate about guiding people to find their own strengths, and I say she still is. She is a co-creator of the Tarot of Empowerment deck and author of the accompanying book and workbook. Judyth uses numerology along with tarot to identify patterns and challenges. She is also a practicing Reiki master who uses her healing energy to help relieve grief and make transitions. So, hello Judyth, and welcome to the Oracle Scroll.
Thank you, Kevin, for inviting me, and it's a delight to be here with you and your audience today.
Well, thank you. So some years ago, I heard a recording of a reading that you did for my partner, and I was blown away and totally mystified by the fact that your reading style and mine are so very similar, or at least they always have been.
Yes, they are.
So I'm curious now, how has this new deck, this new approach, how has it changed how you see traditional interpretations?
Well, it's interesting. I've been reading tarot for over 35 years, and I learned. I apprenticed. I worked with Emily Eminent Wood, who was my first teacher, and with Vicki Noble, and took workshops from various other people, and Joanna Powell Colbert, and I've always been asked, to explain how I interpret things, and the hardest thing about writing the book and the workbook is I had to go inside my own head. I don't know how it is with you, Kevin, but with me, you read. I mean, because it comes from an intuitive part of you, it is your truth.
Yes.
How do you explain what truth is?
Uh-huh.
And I don't know if you have learned how to explain how you read and where you get the guidance from. But going back to your question about how the Tarot of Empowerment deck helped to for me to explain what it is that I do in readings. As we were developing the deck, I had to explain, and Gordana Kurgas, who is co-creator and an extraordinary artist, Gordana and I would talk about the meanings of the cards and symbology of a lot of the old decks. To me, take the person down a path that may not be true anymore.
Yes.
Their old religious symbols and so forth. So one of the things that I discovered as I was doing this is what the differences are. So, for example, the Emperor in a lot of decks is depicted in a fairly negative way. Certainly, Vicki Noble's decks are, the first feminine deck and a real breakthrough in terms of women's voices in tarot, but also as pretty militantly anti-male, and but others too. And the to me, what each card comes down to is a word or a phrase. And so for me, the emperor is about authority. And a benign dictatorship or a benign authority figure is very different than he's often been depicted as somebody who wields the power but not the compassion.
Uh,
And so I changed the name on that particular card to authority. I
mhm.
didn't change all the names on all the cards, but one of the first things I wanted to do, if you're in an empowered culture, you aren't, it isn't a royal culture. And so I eliminated all of the royalty cards.
Okay.
Another card that, when I've done readings in the past, I have never, well, early on I did, but over the years I've not been upset when the death card comes up. Because the
Hmm.
death card is all about transition and transformation, as you know, and as you do in your readings.
Yeah.
But I don't know what your experience is. My experience is very often when the death card would come up, people stopped listening.
Mm.
They couldn't hear what you said beyond that because in their mind and with the depiction of the cards, it it was a an ending that was not was not very satisfying.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but so we renamed the card Life Cycles,
Hmm.
and Gordon's depiction of that is taking from the hands that are the hands of whomever that are releasing the eggs of the salmon, and the salmon going through the life cycles and ending up as the eggs again. And this is the life cycle of the um, of whatever it is that you're going through.
Hmm.
And and for me, the life cycles card is also about releasing grief. It isn't really about going into grief. It's about releasing a grief that in many cases have held you back from taking the next step.
Wow. Okay. That's
And
powerful.
and I have a ritual that almost always goes along with that. And so that's more or less how some of the cards have changed
Hmm.
my view, or not changed them, enhance them, and help
Right.
me define them. Yes.
Right. Well, and a lot of times I find that the traditional depictions and even the words, the names of the cards,
Yes.
refer to things that we just simply don't have in our vernacular now.
Like the Hierophant.
Well, that's a good one. Yeah, I just wrote about him. Yeah, it's there's so many different angles that our modern life has brought to us,
Hmm.
and we're kind of forced to go back and like you say, and I think that you're absolutely correct in it. It needs a little boost and a freshen up, and you've done that with the empowerment deck.
Thank you.
So. So I guess now what I you look around and there are, I guess, thousands at least of different decks.
Tens of
So
thousands.
tens of thousands. Now you touched on this a little bit in your first answer, but what was the real central driving force behind this particular deck, the Tarot of Empowerment?
Um, I'm one of the few tarot readers I know that never wanted to write a book and then never wanted to create a deck. Until I met Gordona and I saw her artwork. And then it was almost like we were guided by spirit.
Hmm.
Spirit is what I call it. And it there was an inevitability about working together to co-create this deck. It's a Major Arcana only deck, and
Hmm.
it took us 2 years to create that and to work together. And Gordon had come to me for a reading, and I had not seen her for 25 years. I think it was
Oh
23
my.
years actually at that time, when she had first come, immigrated to this country, and didn't speak very much English and was compelled to have a reading. And I was reading in a store in Bellingham that's no longer here. And and that was the only reading she ever had for 25 years. And she came back, and the essence of the reading was, you're going to do your art in a new way, because she had come to me about her art,
Right.
and she couldn't imagine doing it in a new way, and so forth. But then the next time I saw her, which was totally accidental, and within a few less than a week, I said, Gordon, by the way, I looked at your art, and you are one of the few people I would have created a deck with. And her immediate response was, "Okay, we'll do it." And and then we took a trip, a full day journey to see, was this practical, and we were going to take all day to decide. And before we even got to our destination, we knew this was something we just had to move forward with.
That's great. That's a great story. And I can just hear Gordon saying that too.
Uh-huh.
Let's do it. She's very forceful.
She's very
So,
forceful, and she's a real bright woman that knows exactly what she wants and where to go.
precisely. And that's, yeah, she's definitely an empowered being.
Yes,
So,
yes.
so now, was there a particular, other than the complexity of putting it together, was there a particular reason you chose to concentrate on the Major Arcana?
I don't think initially, in fact, I know initially we hadn't intended on having a Major Arcana only deck. We decided to go ahead and really focus on that, and complete the Major Arcana deck. And then we started using it. And the readings are so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And I see tarot to a certain extent, that when you use all of the cards, and like I said, most of my life I've read with the full 78, 79 card deck. 79 being, I've used Pamela Eakin's Tarot, the Spirit deck, for many years. And it's got that 79th card, the Unknown, which I did integrate into my deck, although it's a very different interpretation.
I noticed that, yes.
But I'm sorry, I've forgotten the question. Yeah.
Well, why concentrating on the Major Arcana,
Oh,
basically, was...
and so I see tarot as the Major Arcana give the bold outlines of the answer, and the Minor Arcana kind of color it in and shade it in different ways. But in terms of getting the actual full forceful answer, and without any, you still get detail, but without a lot of chatter.
Right.
And I think that the Minor Arcana very often gives a lot of chatter. It may give nuance too, which is important.
Yeah.
And I have on occasion used the full deck since I've had the Major Arcana deck. But I just find the Tarot of Empowerment deck so much more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And my clients seem to be very happy with it. And so I've fallen in love with it all over again.
Well, good. So, well, you actually kind of answered this one already. I was talking about the cards themselves, and having numerous decks of my own, I know that some are more evocative, more, for want of a better word, more talkative than some. So I was curious as to how the Tarot of Empowerment, how does it speak? Does it have an accent?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Does it have an accent? I think it gets down to the essence of what the meaning of each card is. For example, we talked about mentioned the Hierophant. And to me, what the Hierophant boils down to is the Hierophant is the advisor.
Right.
He's somebody you go to for specialized knowledge. And so that's what the name of the card is. And that's where your empowerment comes from, is if it's in an upright position, finding the advisor in the area that best suits you, be it an accountant, a lawyer, a psychologist, a tarot reader, an astrologer, or whoever, that you find that person. If it's in a reverse position, you will be sought out as the advisor, or you know what the advice is in your own heart and to follow that. And that's where the empowerment comes from. In the Hermit, the card, we call the Hermit card introspection. And that, and looking within your own heart and being able to follow your own path, even if you have to do it alone. So that is where the empowerment comes from, is looking at each of the cards and determining why or where you will be empowered through that card.
Okay.
And then looking at the relationship, number one, to the question. And the question, I know you don't like yes/no questions either. And so it's for helping the client or the person know how to phrase a question.
Right.
And a lot of times now when people come to me, they'll say, I want to know what my angels and guides have to tell me. And boy, is that ever powerful. And very often we'll just flip over one card to see, well, what's the theme of what they want to talk to you about? And then that will come up for the person about, well, this is the way that's looking in my life right now, and this is what I want to do about it. And then we go through with that reading. Sometimes that initial card, it doesn't resonate any particular way.
Right.
And then we'll go ahead and do the reading around that. I must say, I don't have people that say to me at the end of the reading, that just didn't mean anything.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't think you have either, because you read in a very empowering way.
Well, it's rare, once in a while, but usually that same person that's telling you they don't quite resonate with what you're saying has a friend who's sitting in the chair next to them
Exactly.
who's
Yeah.
negating their entire argument.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So, yes, it is interesting. And people's reactions, well, let's face it, us as human beings, all of us, we resist facing the truth. And sometimes it's really tough to get someone to realize, hey, and that's what these cards are doing. They basically serve as great tools for introspection, or in our case, intuitively working with other people.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Well, have any of the cards changed their meaning since you started working with them in this deck? Have any of them kind of evolved in your eyes?
I don't know that they've evolved in my eyes. They have certainly become more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
The, and their relationship to numerology is more profound for me.
Mm-hmm.
So that many times when I do a reading, I'll figure out what the person's personal year is. And then the way I do numerology, I know there are at least two different ways of doing the personal year, from January to December or from birthday to birthday. And I do it from January to December.
Right.
And that energy is consistent throughout that year, no matter when your birthday is.
Right.
And then I take the age of the person, and that's, I've discovered very often how they're doing or where that concentration is. So if your personal year is a 2, for example, and your age is 52, then you're doing your 2 year, which is about balance and partnership. And it's what I call the teeter-totter year. And people are tolerant of more teeter than totter, depending
Right.
on who the person is. And then the way that they're doing their year, say their birthday is in May and they're 52, then they're doing it as a 7 at that first part of the year. So they're trying to figure out their partnership and their balance through analysis and understanding. They're trying to figure out what is going on and how do I do that. Then on their birthday, they're 53, and so the way they're doing their 2 year, because they're still in a 2 until December, and the way they're doing their 2 year is now is an 8, because 5 and 3 is 8.
Right. Right.
And so their concentration is all about balance still, but now their focus is on their finances. How do I bring my bank account into balance? How do I decide where I'm going to spend my money? What is it that I want to do to invest more, or
Right.
change jobs, or whatever that is.
Right. Okay.
And
That's
and so then when I see those same numbers come up in a reading, it then relates to how the person is going through their year
right.
also.
Right.
So
Interesting.
it adds another dimension to the reading.
Yes, it does. Yeah, I've used numerology occasionally with mine. I most of the time I get so involved I kind of forget. And
Uh-huh.
so, but yeah, it's interesting how it often connects, and you suddenly start to see parallels. That those are the interesting parts to me. Is how do your actions today reflect, and how do they project? And so
Hmm.
those are always interesting ways to look at things.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
well, actually, we've used most of the time we had. So, if I were going to tell my listeners where to find you and where to find your deck, what's the best way?
Well, I have two different websites. My first website is Judyth Sult, and it's Judyth with a Y,
Yes.
JUDYTHSULT .com, and that's where you can sign up for my newsletter, and I have various articles on tarot, on healing, on I have different rituals on there. And then to see our deck and to get a free reading through our deck, you can go to tarotofempowerment.com. And you'll be able to look at all of the cards there. You can click on any of the cards to get the full meaning, including in a reverse position, what the empowerment is from that card. And then if you go to the free reading, there's a slightly different interpretation as a card for the day.
Ah. I noticed in your newsletter you do a card for the month as well. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So that's an interesting. I've done that type of thing before, and it's interesting when you kind of pull at random and then watch how things kind of fall into place, and it's really it is, and that to me is empowering when you see the things start to pan out. So.
Yes, and you can, sometimes, well, I always suggest that people take a photo of the reading at the end of
Yes.
the reading. And then a lot of my clients will put it on their computer or their phone as the opening screen.
Wallpaper,
So,
yeah.
yeah, so they kind of remember what they're working on, or
Right.
even a single card, because a lot of times, we have the reading, or we pull the card, or we do the numerology, whatever it is, and then it just kind of goes, it's an exercise, and then it goes out the window. I do this myself sometimes. And so having that there as wallpaper does remind you, yeah, right, the
Right.
magician, I can do the magic. I can make it happen.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and so I think that's empowering in and of itself.
Very good. Well, did we miss anything? Is there anything you need your people to know or my audience to know?
No, if they want to reach me, they can reach me through Judyth Sult at gmail.com, Judyth with a Y, or through my website, and they're welcome to sign up for my newsletter. It comes out about the first of the month every month, and I will talk about tarot a little bit. I usually have some kind of a ritual, some kind of something on there. And that's all I can think of right now.
Okay.
I've enjoyed talking with you, Kevin, as always.
Well, thank you very much for taking time out. I know your schedule is crazy overloaded right now, but I appreciate you taking time out of that to have a talk with us. Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Oracle Scroll. Find us on Facebook at The Oracle Scroll. If you wish to send comments, suggestions, or requests, please address them to theoraclescroll@gmail.com.